Hello, hello, learners. My name is Mr. Adesomi. I'm your economics facilitator for today, and today we'll be looking at past questions on economics to help students that will be writing economics in WAEC. So quickly, let's look at the first question there. A vertical supply curve indicates this. A vertical supply curve indicates this. Now, to be able to answer this question, we must first try to interpret what the question is saying. That is the first step in answering the question. Interpretation of what the question is saying. And how do we do that? By first drawing how a vertical supply curve will look like. So let me take my pen and do that. So now this is how your supply curve, a vertical supply curve will look like that. So now this is the price region and this is the quantity region. So meaning irrespective of the price, the same quantity will still be bought. The same quantity will still be bought irrespective of the price, meaning if the price increased from 1 to 2 to 3, the same quantity will still be supplied to the market. So having that knowledge, we should be able to give the answer to the question. So number one answer said A, the same fixed quantity will be supplied no matter the price. And you agree with me that that's the answer. So irrespective of the price, the same quantity will still be supplied. So the answer to question 1 is A. That will take us to question 2. A change in supply is best described as if you remember, under topic supply, we have change in supply and change in quantity supplied. Change in supply and change in quantity supplied. And I told you then that there are factors that are responsible for this change in supply and change in quantity supplied. So quickly, let's mention some of the factors that are responsible for these changes. Now, for your change in quantity supplied, it is also called movement along the supply curve. It is also called movement along the supply curve. Now, the only factor that can cause this movement along the supply curve is the price of the commodity itself. Now, it looks something like this. It looks something like this. This is your supply curve. That's how your supply curves look like. So initially, if this, sorry about that, the pen I'm using is, I'm just using, the pen I'm using is not aligning enough. So let's say this is 2 and this is 5. So now if there's an increase in supply from this point down, so let's say this now is 4 and this is 7. So this movement upward is called movement along the supply curve. So it's the price of the commodity that can cause this movement. It is the price of the commodity that can cause this movement. This diagram is a little bit different from this one I will draw now. It's different from this that I'll draw now. Now this is another supply curve here, and this is another supply curve here. That is what we call a change in supply. So this is the original supply. So it can either move like this or move up. Okay, so you can either move like down or move up. So remember, this is O, the original supply. This is 1 and this is 2. So if it's moving down to the region of 1, If it's moving down to the region of 1, we call that um, a form of expansionary supply curve. A form of expansionary supply curve. Let me draw that again quickly. So if this is the original supply curve here, it's moving down like this. It is called expansionary supply curve. Why? Because your supply is increasing. So, and if it's moving upward like this, it is called contractionary supply curve because supply is reducing. So if this happens, there are a lot of factors that are responsible for this. And some of the factors are cost of production. So if the cost of production is high, then your supply will be low. We need to move like that. Move like that. And if the cost of production is low, your supply will be high. So it moves downwards. Other factors is weather. If the weather is good, so you'll be able to supply more of that commodity. And if the weather is bad, you'll be able to supply less of that commodity. So when we say a change in supply, we're talking about a shift in supply curve either to the right or to the left. Now, so the question, number 2 question, the answer to that, if you agree with me with this explanation, is D. Change or a shift of the supply curve either to the right or to the left. And that will take us to number 3 question. So when a generalization is made based on observed facts, it is known as. When a generalization is made based on observed facts, it is known as. So we have about 4 options there. The first one is normative reasoning. Normative reasoning. So when we talk about normative reasoning, we're talking about or normative statement, as the case may be. We're talking about how things should or how things ought to be. So we're talking about what action is right and what action is wrong. So how things supposed to be. That's what we call normative reasoning. So when we talk about theoretical reasoning, we are talking about practical reasoning. Practical reasoning, explaining why things are like that. So it tries as much as possible. This reason try to understand how and why things are done. That is theoretical reasoning. The third one is inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning. For inductive reasoning, it makes a broad generalization from a specific observation. So when we talk about inductive reasoning, we are talking about application of prediction. It is applied to prediction, forecasting, or behavior, just like we have under consumer behavior. So it's a form of inductive reasoning in general. So, and then D talks about deductive reasoning, meaning building a form of argument from a general point of view down to a conclusive part. So it tries as much as possible to be logical in its conclusion. So with this little knowledge of each of these points, you agree with me that the answer to our question is C. The answer to our question is C, which inductive reasoning, which is general in nature, which is general in nature. So the answer is C, inductive reasoning. So that will take us to 4. So diagram 4, as you can see there, we are talking about consumer behavior. We talk about total utility there. So seeing total utility there, you agree with me that point M there is a point of saturation where total utility is at the maximum. Total utility is at the maximum. So let's look at the question. It said the diagram above shows the total utility curve. At point M, marginal utility is what? At point M, marginal utility is what? As I've told you, at point M, it shows that your total utility is at the maximum. and it is believed that at that point your marginal utility is at zero. So when your total utility is at your marginal utility is at zero. If you remember what utility is, utility means the satisfaction you derive from consuming a commodity. The satisfaction you derive from consuming a commodity. Now, if, as the theory explains, that if you consume more of a commodity, it gets to a point that you reached a point where you're satisfied, you reach a point of saturation, and any other consumption of that commodity would lead to a loss of a satisfaction on that particular commodity. So you see that here consumption is increasing until it gets to that point, and at that point your marginal utility is at zero. So the answer is A. The answer to that question is A, where your marginal utility is at zero. That will take us to question 5. In a demand curve, the relationship between price and quantity is. In a demand curve, the relationship between price and quantity is. Now, if you remember, the law of demand states that the higher the price, permit me to use my pen again to just illustrate, says that the higher the price, when price is high, then quantity demanded according to the law is low. So, seeing that shows that as price is increasing, quantity demanded is increasing, shows that there's an indirect relationship between price and quantity demanded, or what we call inverse relationship. So as one is increasing, the other one is reducing based on the law of demand, which states the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded, and the lower the price, the higher the quantity demanded. So with this knowledge of your demand curve or your law of demand, the answer to the question is C. That will take us to question 6. It said at consumer equilibrium, the slope of indifferent curve is. When we talk about indifferent curve, the indifferent curve is the locus of points, particularly when you are combining bundles of goods together. So we are looking at the bundles of goods that will yield the same utility. If you remember that when we talk about indifferent curve, we also talk about budget line. So your budget line shows the maximum amount of goods in different combinations. Your budget line shows the maximum amount of goods in different combinations, which a consumer can obtain from his or her income. Given the indifferent curve map and all the indifferent curves, which is drawn according to the rank of the consumers, then consumers and the budget line will help us to determine the tangent or the slope of this individual curve. So quickly, let's look at the answer. Now, let me use this quickly. Your budget line looks something like this. This your indifference curve. This your budget line slope like that. Now, let's assume this is a goods B and then goods A. So your difference curve, something like that for the first bundle, then something like that for the second bundle. So we're talking about one that will lap the line, something like this. So that's what we're talking about there. It said at consumer's equilibrium, the slope of the indifferent curve must meet the budget line. It must meet the budget line. So now, if you agree with me with this, that the slope of your indifferent curve, the slope of your budget line, and the curve, they must meet at this point. that point they meet, yes, is a point of equilibrium. That's a point of equilibrium. So take note of this. So now the answer to that question is D, equal to the slope of the budget line, the budget constraint line. So when the indifference curve meet the budget line, that is the point of equilibrium. That is the point of. You can make more research yourself from your textbooks. You'll be able to get more explanation on that. 7. If the arithmetic mean of 1, 2, 5, 6, x, 16, and 18 is, I think there's an error in this question, because that should be an whole number, not 8 and 0. So let's assume it is 80. It's 80. So what you have to do is to count the number of observations. Now we have 1, 2, 5, 6, x, 16, and 18. So when we cut that together, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7. So you're adding all the observations divided by 7. Now we're adding together, equal to 80. So as a good mathematician, you should be able to get the answer. You should be able to get the answer. So the answer to that question will give you a B. A B. So that will take us to question 8. If the price elasticity of demand of a good is 0.43, an increase in the price of the goods will result in what? So remember, price elasticity of demand shows the responsiveness of demand to changes in price. The responsiveness of demand to changes in price, and we have about 5 of them. We have elastic, we have inelastic, we have perfectly elastic, we have perfectly inelastic, and we have unitary. So if after calculating, if you have 0.43 as your price elasticity of demand, so that's less than 1, and the coefficient of that, it shows that the commodity in question is inelastic. The commodity in question is inelastic. So an increase in the price of goods that is inelastic. So if you increase the price, so quantity demanded will change or remain the same, because that's the nature of inelastic goods. For goods that are inelastic, they respond to price little, or they don't respond at all, So if this happens, the consumer will be making gain. So that is why the C will be the answer to that question, because that will result to a net gain. Take note that when the commodity, it shows that it does not have a close substitute. So if the producer increase the price of such commodity, the consumer have no choice but to buy it. So in that case, if the price of such increase from a point to another point, definitely the gain of the consumer, of the producer, will also increase. The answer to number 8, as we have seen from that, is C. That will take us to question 9. Now in question 9, it said a consumer's scale of preference is an arrangement of its. If you remember, I believe this grade 10 topic when you were being introduced to economics. Grade topic, that's SS1, where we talk about scale of preference. So your scale of preference is the arrangement of your wants in order of how important they are to you. It's arrangement of your wants in order of how important they are to you. So, but if you agree with me with that definition, you also agree that the answer to that question is D, meaning you are arranging your wants, your need in order of its importance. So the question to number 9 is D. Number 10, for a supply curve, an increase in the price of a commodity will result in, if you remember your supply curve, which is like this, the supply curve, which is like this. I've drawn that before, but let's draw it again. That's how your supply curves look like. Now, you agree with me that as your price is increasing, your quantity demanded is also increasing. Meaning, if your price is 5, let's take it down. So, if it increased to 9, you can see your quantity supply is also increasing. So, with that knowledge and with the knowledge of your law of supply, which states that the higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied, that will enable you to be able to answer the question. So, with this knowledge of this graph, the answer to that question is that an increase in quantity an increase in the price of a commodity will lead to an increase in the quantity supply. The answer to number 10 is C. The answer to number 10 is C. That will take us to number 11. That will take us to number 11. The fixing of the price of an item above or below the equilibrium price is mostly likely to take place in. So when we say fixing of the price, now quickly let me draw the equilibrium point. Please bear with me. It might not be perfect because of the nature of the device I'm using. So we have the equilibrium point there. We have the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. Don't mind me. Equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. So if you are fixing the equilibrium price, if you are fixing your price above or below the equilibrium price, yeah, it is possible. It's what we call price control, when government come in to fix the price of commodity below or above the equilibrium point. So if government is fixing it below the equilibrium point, it is called maximum price, or what we call the price ceiling, or we call the price ceiling. If they are fixing it above the equilibrium point, meaning here, it is called the price floor, or what we call the minimum price. So it's only government that can do this. Only government that can fix the price below or above the equilibrium point. Now, if government is involved, now it shows that government is part of the individual, or the part of the sector. Remember that under our sector, we have 2-sector economy, we have 3-sector economy, we have 4-sector economy. Your 2-sector economy is Y equal to C plus I, while our 3-sector economy is C plus I plus G plus G. That is household. Your C there is your consumption, your I there is investment, plus G there is your government. So your C stands for your household, while your I stands for your firm, while your G stands for government. So in this case, government is involved. So let's look at our option, free market. So if it's free market, it's just C plus I. Government is not involved. Now, if government is involved, government are just there to do 3 things: print money, settle disputes, and defend the territory of the country. It is also called a capitalist economy. The free market economy is also called a capitalist economy. Now, your developed economy, just a term used in economics, it's not part of the economic system. C, yes, it's part of the economic system, where we talk about 50 of government participation and 50 of private participation. So it is called PPP, public-private partnership, where the two arms come together to help to maintain, control the factors of production. D is called centrally planned economy, which is also the socialist economy. Here, government is involved. So now the answer to this question, based on this explanation, is C. Because of course, indeed, government is involved, but government is involved more. In C, government is also involved, but with the help of the private sector. Government is just there to control the excesses of the private sector, and that is what that's what the price control does, to control the excesses of the private sector. So with this knowledge of your price control, you agree with me that the answer is C. The answer to the question is C, a mixed economy system. That will take us to number 12. Number 12. A normal goods with close substitute is likely to have its price elasticity of demand as, look at that, a normal goods with close substitute. So it shows that the commodity in question, so far it has close substitute, is elastic in nature. It is elastic in nature. Now, your elastic goods is greater than 1. The coefficient of your elastic good is greater than 1. And based on that, the answer to that question is C. The answer to that question is C, greater than unitary, because your unitary is 1. Your unitary is 1. So you're just trying to convince you. They're just trying to convince you there. So that's number 12 answer is C. Number 12 answer is C. That will take us to number 13. A major problem facing all economy is how to. A major problem facing all economies is how to. So now, looking at this, we all know the reason why we study economics. The main reason why we study economics is because of scarcity. That's the main reason. If all that we want, we can have, there's no reason to study economics. If you remember, when you were introduced to economics, it is believed, and we told your facilitator told you then, that human wants are insatiable, human wants are unlimited, but the means to satisfy these wants are limited. Now, that equation leads to scarcity. So the major problem facing every economy in the world is scarcity. So with that knowledge, you agree with me that the answer to this question is C, allocating scarce resources. Allocating scarce resources is the major challenge facing every economy of the world. Every economy of the world. So that will take us to number 14. Number 14. In a free market economy, remember I told you then that a free market economy is same thing as a capitalist economy. The price system allocates resources. The price system allocates resources to who? When we talk about price system, we're talking about the forces of demand and supply. That will call price system. The forces of demand and supply. So the relationship between demand and supply determines the price, if you remember your equilibrium points. So in a free market economy, the price system, meaning relationship between demand and supply, determines who gets the commodity. So in this case, the price system allocates resources to their best alternative uses. A talking about to ensure general welfare, that is a socialist economy. Under perspective, that's socialist economy. To reduce poverty, that's the government are trying to do that. Okay, so that is socialist economy, or sometimes the mixed economic system. But to their best alternative uses, yes, that is the free market economy. That is free market economy, because they are always there to make profit. So whatever they do and there's no profit making there, they don't invest in it. They invest in the alternative. That will take us to number 15. Economics is regarded as a social science because economics is regarded as a social science. Remember, we say economics is a science, but it's a social science. Why? Because it studies human behavior. So under your social science is different from your applied science. It's different from applied science. So when we say social science, these are a science field that studies the society, that studies community, that studies interaction between human beings. So economics is um, a science subject, not only a science but a social science subject. Why? Because it studies human behavior. So the answer to that question is A. Is A. 16. The long run is a period during which a firm's yes, during which a firm's what? In the long run, remember we have the short run and the long run. Of course, in the short run, we have what we call the law of diminishing return. That's in the short run, where we believe that we have two factors of production. We have the fixed and we have the variable factors of production. So it is believed that in the short run, at least, you have one fixed factor of production, while all other costs might vary. But in the long run, it's a period that allows you to change your factors of production. So it's enough period to be able to change your factors of production. So all factors of production varies. You can change all your assets in the long run. So the answer to that question is D. Varies. It varies. All factors of production varies in the long run. So 16 is D. That'll take us to 17. That'll take us to 17. A production function. A production function relates. So if you have to draw or you have to write a production function, of course, it relates from output to input. So when we talk about that, is we're talking about the technical relationship. We're talking about the technical relationship between your input and your output of goods and services. So we're talking about the technical relationship between your input and your output. How many inputs are you going to put to have this output? So under that, we talk about productivity. So the answer to that question is B. So it relates relationship between your output and your input. That will take us to 18. Question 18. An important feature of perfect competition is this. Now, if you remember, your perfect competition is under your market structure. That topic is under your market structure. Now, under your market structure, we have different types of markets. Markets that is determined by the quantity, by the goods sold in them. Market that is determined by price. A market that is determined by the distribution and network. So under your perfect competition market, now we're talking about market according to price. So under that we have the perfect market and we have the imperfect market. We have the perfect market and we have the imperfect market. So looking at that question critically, one of the important features of your perfect competitive market is that, so number one, the movement of goods and services is restricted. No. Under your perfect market, there's mobility of factor of production. Price are centrally administered. No. Under your perfect market, the consumer have a good knowledge of the price. So that can be the answer. C. There's an adequate knowledge of existing price. Yes, because all the players, the consumers, the producers the sellers now have a good knowledge of the price. So the answer to that question is C. Number 19, and imperfect market exists. So where do we have an imperfect market? We have an imperfect market. Number one, so their product is identical in nature, which is wrong. Monogeneous, which is wrong. It is heterogeneous in nature. Your imperfect markets product are heterogeneous in nature. B. There is a perfect information among the new few buyers and sellers. No. That is a good example of a perfect market. C, the allocation of some sellers gives them an advantage over the other. The location, sorry about that, the location of some sellers give them an advantage over the other. Yes. Yes. So number 19 answer is C. Let's see D. Both buyers and seller have free entering into and free exit. That characteristic belongs to a perfect market. So number 19 answer is C. Number 19 answer is C. Number 20, a firm's shutdown point is reached when the average revenue falls to cover the. So take note of that. When we talk about average average revenue, how do you get your average revenue? We're talking about your total revenue divided by quantity. So it is believed that your average revenue, it said falls to cover, it said A, marginal cost, B, average fixed cost, C, average total cost, and D, average variable cost. So take note of that. Average variable cost is the cost of raw materials. So the answer to that question is D. Your average variable cost, when combined with price, indicates whether or not a firm should shut down production or not in the short run. So take note of that. Your average variable cost, when you combine that with your price, indicates whether a firm should shut down production in the short run or or not. If the price is if the price now, which is the revenue, is greater than the average cost, then the firm should continue operating. But if that way around, if the price is lower than your average variable cost, then the firm should close down shop. So take note, when we talk about average, we're talking about price. Average variable cost is price, while average revenue is also written to the revenue per unit of a commodity. So when you combine that together, if the price generated is higher than the cost per unit of a commodity, then the firm should continue producing. But if the cost per unit of the commodity is higher than the price gained from per unit of the commodity, then the firm should close down. The firm should close down. Okay. I would like to stop at 20 because of the time frame. I want you guys to also be able to through some of these questions yourself. Let's see 21. Let's see 21. You said the table below shows a demand schedule for egg. Now the question is, what's the equilibrium price? The equilibrium price is where your demand and supply meets. Where your demand and supply meets. So that price will give you the equilibrium point. So in this case, at price 80, quantity demanded is 490 and quantity supply is 490. So your equilibrium price is 80. So the answer to that question is B. The answer to that question is B. So let me help you out a little. Let me take, if I can, to 25 and then I stop. 22, the major advantage of specialization and division of labor is that the major advantage of specialization and division of labor is that A talks about trade union will be encouraged, B talks about workers will be adequately rewarded, C talks about time wastage will be minimal. Yes, time wastage will be minimal because division of labor means dividing the production process into different stages and allowing each labor or group of labor to occupy each of these stages. It makes production fast and it reduces time wastage. So that is a direct answer to that question. So number 22 answer is C. Number 22 answer is C. Number 23, In the long run, a monopolistic maximize its profit when the marginal cost equals what? The marginal revenue. When the marginal cost equals the marginal revenue. There are lovely diagrams for this, but because of the nature of the device I'm using, I'm being handicapped. I'm not able to draw those diagrams properly. I've given you a lovely diagram on this, but you have them in your textbook, so you can go to your textbook and check. So take note that in the long run, a monopolistic maximizes its profit when the marginal cost is equal to the marginal revenue. Number 24, which of the following is an example of a fixed cost? Which of the following is an example of a fixed cost? Remember, a fixed cost are your fixed costs are cost of assets that you incur, cost of assets that you incur, and then these are costs that don't change even as your variable costs change. They remain the same. They remain the same. They don't change. So a good example of such costs is rent on your building. In respect to people are living in that building, the rent still remains the same. Unlike your which talk about fuel cost. If you are producing more or you put more load on the generator, it consumes more fuel. Depending on the appliances you're using at home, the power holding company will bring more bills. And then transportation, of course, depending on the volume of what you're carrying, will determine the cost of the cost you pay. But B still remains the same. Number 25, which that's where I will stop. If government fixed price below the equilibrium point, what effect will it be on demand? What effect will it be on demand? Let me quickly help you to draw the diagram on that. So let's see. So if government fix price below the equilibrium point, so this is our equilibrium point. Let's see. Okay, PP, and we have Q there. So if government is fixing the price below the equilibrium point, that is here, we call this maximum price control, or we call this price ceiling. So government do this to protect consumers. Government do this to protect consumers. So if this happens, remember, this is your demand, this is your demand, this is your supply, this is your supply. So if government fix the price, taking note of your law of demand and supply. So if the price reduce, demand will be more. So if you trade it, you can see supply is low, and trade it down, demand is high. So in this case, we have what we call excess demand. Excess demand there. Why? Because supply is low, because the law of supply states that the higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied, and the lower the price, the lower the quantity supplied. So in this case, the price is low, definitely supply will be low. And the law of demand states the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded, and the lower the price, the higher the quantity demanded. In this case, the price is low, therefore demand is high. So when you do the calculation, you will notice that we have what we call excess demand, and that will discourage supply. That might discourage ordering of some commodity because the suppliers will not want to supply some of their commodities. So having this knowledge, number 25 answer is D. Number 25 answer is D. Quantity demanded will increase. Quantity demanded will increase. So I will stop there for today. So if time permits, I might continue with this question later, but not for now. So you can make more research yourself. Thank you very much.